Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching step by step how to paint this winter landscape, complete with a river, snowbank, snowfall, and pine trees. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's tutorial, I'm using Davey's Gray, VanDyke Brown, Payne's Gray, Antwerp Blue, and Black, and I also have some white gouache by Winsor & Newton. And the brushes I'm using are size 2, 6, and 16 round Princeton brush. And the paper I have taped down is a size 5 by 7 inches. The first thing I want to do is take a little bit of Payne's Gray or Blue, and I'm just going to really water it down to a really light value. So to about this value, so super watered down, and that's going to be our sketch color. And with this sketch color, I'm going to start by painting just above halfway our snow mound, and it's going to slope slightly upward and then back down again. Then from here, I'm going to paint kind of a second slope that cuts through here, and it's going to go up and then up again, just like so. So a couple little waves, just like that. Next, we're going to paint in our river silhouette. So I'm going to start by doing a line that kind of swoops over towards the left. Then we're going to have another little divot. Almost looks like a kind of like a snake that's wound up or so. Then from here, I'm going to do a larger curve. Next, a little bit of a divot in that curve as it swoops back inward. And then I'm just going to bring the rest in just a curved kind of S curve down to the left side. Keep in mind that you can pause this video at any time to follow along with the stages of the sketch. Next, I'm going to paint a little kind of horizontal line going towards the right. Then I'm gonna paint a secondary kind of curve shape, just like that. I'm gonna bring this one outward more and then bring it slightly in and all the way out towards the right. From here, I'm going to add in just a little bit of a silhouette of some snow kind of peeping through the right corner. And come to think about it, this is what I love about sketching, is you can kind of adjust it. I'm going to bring this line in just a little bit more, like a little bit more in depth. And then to kind of erase the former line, one little handy trick I like is to use my size 16 brush with a little bit of water and some pressure using the bristles of the brush, and voila, this is erased. Pretty cool. I love doing that little trick. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our sky. We're going to use a lot of Payne's Gray and Davey's Gray for our sky. So I'm going to start with doing a wash of water all the way to the edges of the tape and all the way up and across. I'm painting alongside the silhouette of the snow. I love using wet and wet technique, so this part's gonna be extra fun. So now I'm gonna take some Davey's Gray, and I'm just gonna do a wash of the Davey's Gray pretty much all the way across. It is so faint. So I'm just doing kind of a simple wash of it. This is just gonna give our sky a little bit, just a little bit more color. Next, I'm gonna tap in just the tip of my brush into some Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is so rich, so I'm just adding a little bit here and there. I added some towards the left, and now I can add a little bit maybe towards the right. It's just gonna give our sky a little bit more depth and kind of give it a little bit of a misty fog effect with the Davey's gray popping through. Now what I'm gonna do is take a little bit more concentrated Payne's gray, and again, a little goes a long way, and I'm gonna paint some Payne's gray in kind of this really loose vertical format. Before I get to the vertical format that I'm talking about, I'm just gonna paint some Payne's gray along the ridge here. Okay. Now I'm just gonna take my brush with some Payne's gray and just do some really loose vertical brushwork, just going up and down. Some of the brushwork is taller and some is kind of medium and some is quite small. This is to just mimic some really loose tree texture off in the distance. Just like so. And again, it's so loose, so don't overthink it too much. We will add some, like a couple pops of some trees in here that are a little bit more potent, but for now, that's exactly the look that we're going for. Now what I want to do is paint the silhouette of our river. So I'm going to take my size 16 brush and start by filling it in with some water all along the border edges. Okay, and now I want to take some Antwerp Blue and just incorporate a really light wash of our Antwerp Blue. I'm just subtly adding this in. It's okay for some subtle white areas to kind of show, not a big deal at all. Now I'm going to switch gears to my size 6 brush, which, ooh, whoopsies. Okay, that fell way behind here, all good. Okay, so with my size 6 brush, I'm going to take some Payne's gray, and I want to really start to add some more dimension to our river. So I'm going to start at the bottom here and do some shading alongside this edge. And alongside the edge, I'm going to give some irregular texture, just because we really don't want the edges to be perfectly chiseled. That's not how rivers are in nature. There's some variegation there. And as I kind of incorporate the Payne's gray, I'm doing some left to right brush strokes just to get kind of a really loose ripple effect. And now I'm going to add some more alongside this border here. And again, as I work my way along the border, I'm going to make sure that I give some irregular texture, just like so. And I'll do the same thing over towards the left here. We're working a little bit quickly just because we're working against the time of the water that we laid out to dry. So as we apply the color, we're being mindful of just the timing of things. I'm gonna add a little bit more of the Payne's gray over here as well. And again, don't be afraid to add a few horizontal brush strokes, just like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing up towards the top of the river. Real quick, I'm just going to apply kind of the broadness of the outline of the shading alongside the borders. And then once that's applied, I'm just going to take my brush and drag and buff out some of the Payne's gray. And now I'm just going to go through and just apply those horizontal strokes. And then I'm going to take my brush and lift some of the blue off by dabbing my brush on a paper towel and then going back in and just lifting some pigment using plenty of pressure with my brush just to get some more highlights as well. That just gives the river a bit more texture. All right, I'm just gonna allow the river and the sky to kind of set and dry, and when we come back, we will move on to some more details. Now that the river and the sky is dry, I'm going to add some texture to our snow. So I'm going to take my size 6 brush and mix some Payne's gray with a little bit of black, and then I'm gonna add in a couple good brushfuls of water to that mixture just to tone it down a little bit. And I'm going to start up towards the top here just by applying a little bit of that color. And once I've applied kind of a swoop of that color, I'm going to just buff it out by dragging a clean brush all the way across. And I'm going to add a little bit of color, or the shaded color, down alongside this border of the river. Then from here, I want to add some shading just alongside this border edge as well, and a little bit up towards this curve. Then I'm just going to drag my brush across just to get a little bit more texture. Now I want to add in just a little bit of the shaded texture up towards here and some on this border below. And I'll do the same thing on this edge as well. And then I'm going to take a clean brush and then just buff out some of that texture all the way across using a dry brush technique of just rubbing the side bottom of the brush all the way across, leaving some white popping through as well. Then I'm just going to buff out some of this shaded color. Okay, now I want to add some of that shaded color over towards the edge here of this snowy area. Now I'm going to add some of that shaded color alongside this border. Do the same thing on this border here, and then this smaller border there. And then I'm just going to take a clean brush and just kind of drag out some of that shading slightly. And pulling from some of this paint here, I'm going to softly outline a little bit of like a hill. So I'm just dragging some of that pigment upward to create kind of that hill mound. And then I'll do the same thing over here. I'm just kind of pulling from some of this wet pigment, dragging it up. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of a wash of some of that shaded color, allowing some of the white to pop through. I'm going to have just a little bit of texture on this more white area. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush and just do a second layer of some of the shaded color just to kind of stand out amongst the border of where the river meets the snow. I'm just doing this very loose, kind of edgy, variegated, shaded texture. I'm allowing some of the background color to pop through. It's just really loose. And then I'm just going to kind of redefine that hill, and I'll do the same thing over in this area to just kind of define some of that hill over here as well. Okay, so now what I want to do is paint a couple pine trees off in the distance, and I'm going to mix up some Payne's gray with a touch more black. And that's just going to give our pine tree color a little bit more dimension. And I'm not adding water to this, or, you know, extra water like we did for the wash color. And now I'm just going to paint just a couple pine trees. So I'm going to paint a vertical line to mimic a trunk. And I'll do a small one off towards the left. And by a couple, I mean more like a few. That's just how I roll. And then I'm going to do another one off towards the right here. And let's see, maybe a tall one over towards the edge here. And then I'll do maybe one over towards the edge, towards the left side as well. So we've got 5 total. Now what I want to do is just fill in these pine trees. And I've done quite a few tutorials on pine trees. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll link it down in the description. But basically I'm adding these really loose, almost like eyelash, like semi-similar to like eyelashes that kind of swoop slightly on either side of this vertical line. And then I'm mimicking kind of a cone shape. So the top is nice and narrow, and then as I work my way towards the bottom, it slowly grows in width, just like that. So I'm going to add those brush strokes, and again, it takes some layering of those kind of eyelash brush strokes just to make a more dense tree. But I'm gonna go ahead and follow that cone shape for each of the remaining trees. Using the same blend that I used for the trees, I am just going to add a defining kind of loose outline on each of the little curves we have, just to kind of add a little bit more contrast and dimension to our river. This just subtle kind of swooping curve of the darker paint will just allow for even more definition. Okay, so that just kind of made the river pop just a little bit more. And now I want to add a little bit of shrubbery. I don't know if that's a word, shrubbery, but I just made it up. And I'm gonna mix some VanDyke Brown with a touch of black, but we want some kind of warm colored twigs using our size 2 brush. And with the size 2 brush, all I'm gonna do is add a couple areas where we have kind of these bushes that have lost their foliage, but they still got their branches. And I'm just layering some very irregular angled little lines here that are kind of overlapped and super loose. So whenever I do branches of any sort, I kind of like to mimic the letter Y. You can see I've got these like little angled Y letters basically that are just pointed in different directions, and that's kind of just how I work my way around forming that. Okay, so there's one little kind of shrubbery, as I said before, or shrub. And then I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm just gonna have basically some interconnected Y letter shapes that are kind of just layered and applied at different angles. Then I'll go ahead and do one kind of in this fold here. And then maybe just one more off in the distance. I wonder where we should put that one. Maybe just off kind of the coast here, just that little, right coming off of that edge of the water. Okay, so there's our shrubs. Love it. And now we're gonna add some tree silhouettes, and I'm gonna do mostly black with a touch of the VanDyke Brown mixed in, just to warm it up just a little bit. Okay, so for our trees, I'm gonna start with one off slightly towards the left. I'm gonna start with a line that's slightly curved It's got just like a little bit of irregular curvature to it. And the base, I'm just going to thicken up just a little bit. From here, I want to add some branches. So do a branch towards the right. Once I have that branch, I'm going to extend it to be very thin towards the end, and then just add a few angled lines, just like so. Again, kind of mimicking the letter Y on some of them, just at different odd angles. Just like that. And then I'm going to do a branch on this left side, add a couple angled branches stemming off of there as well. And then just as I work my way up, I'm adding a branch and then a few just finer branches stemming off of the main branch. I'm gonna kind of extend the height here. I'm just gonna add a few finer branches with really light pressure with my brush, and the height of the tree can even run off the page a little bit. That's totally fine. And then I'm just going to thicken the main branch, sorry, the trunk, just a little bit. Okay, so there's one tree. And then I want to do another tree. So I'm gonna do one over here and then maybe another one, but I will start with two. So I'm gonna apply the same technique where the main trunk is kind of curvy. It's got some kinks in it. And then the base is the thickest part. I'm gonna thicken up this base a little bit more too. Okay. Now from here, I'm just gonna add a branch coming off of the right and then add a bunch of the dainty kind of branches stemming off of there. And I'll do the same thing off towards the left. And here I'm just having fun being creative with placing the branches. And then I'm just going to extend some finer branches up towards the top, using really light pressure with my brush. Okay, and now looking at this, I kind of want to add maybe just a third tree, and it's going to be more centered. It's going to be kind of just above the shoreline here. And again, a little bit irregular for the trunk. It's going to be smaller than the others because it's off in the distance. And from here, same thing. I'm just going to add some of those kind of whimsical, loose, angled branches. All right, just like that. Just gonna thicken the trunk a hair bit. Alrighty, now that we have 3 winter trees, I want to shade a little bit below them. So I'm going to take my size 2 brush and just add a little bit of the combo of the Payne's gray and black and just kind of fan it off towards the left for some shading. Okay, now I'm gonna take some white gouache, and using the white gouache, I want to add a little bit of some highlighting in our river. So I'm just gonna take my brush, using my size 2 brush, and all I wanna do is add just a few white shimmers of the white gouache, and it's kind of got this nice texture. But I'm just adding a few pops of the white. Just some horizontal dashes. Sometimes I find that the white gouache can kind of dilute a bit, so sometimes it's good to go a little bit more heavier handed, because as it dries, it sometimes lifts in the opaqueness of the white. So I'm just gonna go in and make sure I add just a couple areas where it's a little bit more popping. Okay, and now what I want to do is add just a few touches of some snowfall. So I'm just going to use the tip of my size 2 brush and some gouache just to add a few flecks of white, and they can overlap on the trees as well. And I'm not going too crazy, I just want kind of the essence of the start of some snowfall. I'm just using super light pressure. feel like this just adds a really cute, whimsical flair to the landscape. And the very last step, and I feel like those are my famous words before I add another step, but hopefully this is the very last step. I'm gonna take a combo of some black and some Payne's gray. And all I wanna do is kind of bring in a little bit of sharpness to the edge work of our river here. Just want to like tuck in a little bit more of some jaggedness with the river. So I'm just kind of adding some corner kind of irregular borders alongside those edges. So I'm just kind of extending some of those areas. Okay, I really like how that just kind of added a little bit more sharpness to the landscape. And there we have it, our completed watercolor winter landscape. Thank you so much for joining me today for this watercolor winter landscape tutorial. This has got to be one of my personal favorite ones that we've done so far this winter season. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any further watercolor tutorials. And if you'd like, you can comment down below and just suggest other types of landscapes you would enjoy learning.